June 17, 1944, 05:42 a.m., south of Carentan, Normandy. A low layer of fog clings to the hedgerows, thick as smoke, turning every shape into a ghost. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, just a pale, watery glow on the horizon, enough light to see silhouettes, not enough to trust them. And that's when the column stops. A sharp whistle, a raised fist. Boots halt in the mud. Somewhere ahead, barely 50 yards, something is wrong. Men of Company F, 327th Glider Infantry Regiment, still sore from days of fighting, freeze mid-stride. Even the birds seem to hold their breath. Cold whisper moves down the line. Those whispers that spreads without a single word actually being spoken. A minefield, not expected, cutting directly across their planned advance. You can almost feel the air tighten as every soldier realizes what that means. The next minutes, maybe hours, death will sit just inches under the soil. The wrong step doesn't wound, vaporizes. And standing near the front of the halted line is Private First Class Daniel Brooks, 21 years old, helmet slightly crooked, a dented metal bucket hanging from his pack like some pointless piece of junk nobody bothered to throw away. The bucket idiot, some of the men called him, too cautious, too jumpy, too observant for a war that rewarded speed more than careful thinking. But at this moment, it's Brooks who notices something the others don't. There's no pattern to the grass, no disturbed soil, no obvious steel prongs poking through the surface. But the silence feels wrong. It's the kind of wrongness you don't learn in training. It's the kind that comes only after seeing what a misplaced boot does to a man. The platoon sergeant, Staff Sergeant Dale Kincaid, crouches low, scanning the field. He mutters under his breath, a curse layered with fatigue. He knows the Germans. He knows their habits. And the hedgerows around Carentan have been nothing but teeth and traps since D-Day. He whispers, "Teller mines maybe, or S-mines. Either way, we can't move another inch." Behind him, the column begins to compress, the worst thing for a minefield. Tight spaces mean accidents. Fear means mistakes, and mistakes mean men die. Brooks swallows hard. His throat is dry from hours without water. His hands shake, not from fear, but from the cold morning soaked into his bones. The bucket knocks gently against his pack. Clink, clink, clink. The small sound vanishes into the fog, but to Brooks, it's like the bucket is calling to him. He glances ahead again. The ground is too still, too untouched, and that makes it more dangerous, not less. The squad's radio operator whispers, "Should we get the engineers?" Kincaid nods. "Yeah, but they'll take time. Could be an hour, could be more." An hour in Normandy is a lifetime. The Germans could counterattack. Artillery could bracket them. Another unit could walk straight into the same trap. Brooks looks down at the bucket. The dent on its side catches a sliver of the growing morning light. Then something clicks in Brooks's mind. Not a memory, a sound. A faint metallic tick he once heard when a German AP mine was scraped during a training demonstration back in England. The sergeant had dragged a small metal rod across the ground to illustrate the difference between dirt and steel. The noise was so subtle most guys didn't care. Brooks cared. Brooks remembered. He kneels slowly, sets his rifle aside, and unhooks the bucket. Kincaid turns, eyebrows narrowing. "Brooks, what the hell are you doing?" Brooks doesn't fully know, only that something inside him insists this will work. He scoops a handful of loose gravel from the road's edge and pours it into the bucket and tests its weight. By tilting it back and forth, he listens to how the stones tumble. The sergeant looks baffled. "We're not cooking breakfast, son." A couple men snicker quietly, anything to ease the tension. Brooks ignores them. He crawls toward the edge of the suspected minefield. Every movement is deliberate, steady, respectful, as if the earth is alive and listening. He places the bucket upside down on the soil. Then he drags it forward, just an inch, then another. The gravel inside shifts, a soft whispering slide like sandpaper against metal. The men stare. Brooks drags the bucket again. This time something happens. Clink. A crisp, unmistakable note rises from beneath the gravel's whisper, a metal-on-metal kiss, a buried promise of death. Kincaid stiffens. Brooks freezes mid-motion. That was no rock, and no imagination. Somewhere under that exact spot is a steel pressure plate, likely the top of a teller mine, the kind that turns.
Brooks moves the bucket again, just a few inches to the right. The gravel slides. A pause. Silence. Then, clink. Another mine. A third drag. Clink. A fourth. Brooks exhales shakily. They're packed tight, like a net. Kincaid whispers, "Damn Krauts wanted to funnel us right into it." Brooks continues crawling, dragging the bucket with the slow patience of a surgeon. The bucket's battered rim scrapes the topsoil softly. The gravel rolls inside like a tiny storm. Each drag is a question. Each clink is an answer. After the 10th mine, even the seasoned sergeant looks rattled. How many did they put here? Brooks doesn't look up. His voice is steady now, focused. However many it takes to stop us. He marks another mine, then another. At one point, he drags the bucket forward and hears nothing. The men hold their breath. Maybe this spot is safe. He moves the bucket another inch. Clink. This one is sharper, harder, different. Brooks freezes. His skin crickles. "That's not a teller," he says quietly. "That's the top plate of a bouncing Betty." The S mine, the most feared mine in the German arsenal. Triggered by pressure or tripwire, it jumps waist-high and explodes, shredding everything within 30 meters. The kind of weapon that turns a squad into red mist. The men behind Brooks stiffen. One whispers a prayer under his breath. Brooks marks the spot with trembling fingers. He's breathing faster now. Not from fear, though it's there, but from calculation. He's building a mental map of the minefield, connecting the dots. The Germans didn't lay these randomly. They created kill pockets, zones designed to trap soldiers, force them to retreat into predictable paths, and detonate the Bettys right where they do the most harm. Brooks drags the bucket another inch. The gravel rolls. Silence. No clink. He drags again. Still no clink. Kincaid whispers, "Brooks, don't push it. Engineers are on their way." Brooks closes his eyes. He's tired. He's sore. He's scared. But backing off now means nothing, because what he hears is not the absence of mines. It's the pattern. A human mind sees chaos. A careful mind sees intention. And Brooks sees it. They left a narrow corridor, a tiny winding path through the mines, a cruel trick meant to lure the careless, but the bucket has revealed it early. He looks up. "I think I can trace it. The safe path. It's tight, really tight, but it's there." Kincaid's face hardens. He hates the idea. Every instinct tells him not to risk a man's life on a hunch. But this isn't a hunch. It's method. It's technique. It's sanity in the middle of madness. And the alternative is waiting exposed in morning light while German patrols or artillery find them. Kincaid nods once. "Go slow. If you feel anything wrong, you stop." Brooks swallows, adjusts his grip on the bucket, and crawls deeper into the fog, following the invisible thread he believed the enemy left behind. Behind him, 50 men wait in absolute stillness. Every breath is a countdown. Every second stretches long and thin. The fog thickens, swallowing Brooks until he becomes nothing but a shape, then not even that. Only the faint scraping of gravel inside the bucket remains. And then, abruptly, the scraping stops. A long silence follows. Too long. The kind of silence that kills. Kincaid rises to one knee, panic flashing across his face. "Brooks, report!" No answer. The men tighten their grips on their rifles. Someone whispers, "Oh God." And then, cutting through the fog, "Sergeant, you need to see this." The voice is calm. Almost calm enough to be wrong.
Kincaid pushes forward, heart pounding, and when he reaches Brooks, still kneeling, he sees the shocking thing the private has discovered half buried in the soil. Something that shouldn't be here. Something that changes everything they thought about this minefield, and the German unit that laid it. A revelation that will reshape the entire mission. For a moment, Kincaid can't understand what he's looking at. The fog coils around them, thin and cold. Drifting over a patch of earth Brooks has carefully brushed clean with his bare hands. And there, half buried in the Normandy soil, is a shape that absolutely should not be inside a minefield. A helmet. German issue. Model 42. Caked with dirt, the steel pitted by rust, but unmistakable. Brooks whispers, "Sergeant, this isn't a mine. It's a marker." Kincaid's breath catches. The Germans did use reference points when laying mines, but not like this. Not in the open. Not exposed where any passing soldier could see it once uncovered. Something about it feels wrong. Too deliberate. Too cleanly placed. Brooks reaches out and taps the edge of the helmet lightly with the bucket. No clink this time, just steel, harmless steel. And then he lifts it. Underneath, pressed into the damp soil, lies a small plank of wood with German ink lettering burned into the surface. Nicht betreten, Sperrstelle dry, do not enter, obstruction point 3. Kincaid whispers a curse. This isn't a minefield. It's a maze. Brooks nods. The whole thing is laid in segments. They left this as a sign for their own guys. The two men exchange a look, one part fear, one part relief, one part realization. This minefield wasn't meant to hold the line. It was designed to channel troops, enemy or friendly, into a specific, predictable route, a path the Germans themselves would have used to withdraw, regroup, or counterattack. And if Company F could find that path, they could walk straight through the minefield without losing a single man. But the Germans were clever. Every safe path in a minefield is safe for a reason. It leads somewhere. Sometimes somewhere worse. Kincaid studies the helmet, the message, the layout of Brooks's marked stakes. If this is obstruction point 3, where the hell are points 1 and 2? Brooks adjusts his glasses, crooked from crawling, then sweeps the bucket gently over the soil again. The gravel tumbles, whispering. Drag, pause, drag. Nothing. He moves left, drag, clink. He marks another mine, but this one feels different. It's deeper, heavy, unlikely to be a simple anti-personnel charge. Tank mine, Brooks mutters. Probably part of a stop line. Kincaid's mind works fast, meaning the path Germans used for retreat wasn't for infantry. It was for armor. Brooks nods slowly. The realization hits both men at once. A safe corridor wide enough for a tank means one thing. It's also wide enough for a company of American infantry. But the corridor would not be completely safe. Germans rarely left a clean escape route without something else waiting at the end. A machine gun nest, a POC-40 anti-tank gun, or a rifle squad dug into the hedgerows. The bucket scrapes softly as Brooks widens the perimeter of marked mines. The stakes form a jagged outline, like a cracked spine leading deeper into the fog. Behind him, the men of Company F watch, barely breathing. You can almost hear their hearts, fast and hard, echoing in the stillness. Young Private Jimmy Lott whispers to the man beside him, "How's one guy doing all this? Ain't right, ain't natural." But it wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. It was memory, discipline, and a mind that saw patterns where others saw dirt. Brooks's careful nature, the thing his squad often mocked, had become the one tool saving all their lives. Kincaid signals for the platoon to hold position and crouches beside Brooks. "What made you think to use the bucket?" Brooks keeps working as he answers. His voice is low, steady. "In England, training field, demonstration on steel plate contact. They used a rod, but the bucket does the same thing, just quieter. More surface area. The gravel masks the drag unless there's something solid underneath. Damned farm kid ingenuity." Brooks smiles faintly. "My dad used to find buried fence stakes the same way. Sound travels different through metal." Another clink snaps their attention forward. Brooks marks the mine. That one was close, too close. 1 inch more and the bucket would have hit the fuse cap. Even a slight shift in pressure could have triggered it. Kincaid swallows hard. "You still want to keep going?" Brooks looks out into the fog. "If I stop now, we'll never know the path, and we'll be stuck here until the engineers show up or the Germans spot us. Either way, someone dies."
The sergeant studies him for a moment. Brooks is not the strongest soldier, not the loudest, not the bravest in the traditional sense. But fearlessness isn't always bravery. Sometimes, bravery is doing the terrifying thing with clear thought and trembling hands. Kincaid places a hand on his shoulder. "All right, I'm with you, but we do this slow." The two men move forward together, Brooks dragging the bucket, Kincaid watching his back. The stakes form a twisting route behind them, bending through the field like a narrow snake trail between death on all sides. 20 mines marked, then 30, then 35, each one a tiny victory against the unseen. Fog thins slightly as the sun climbs, revealing the faint outline of hedgerows ahead. And that's when Brooks sees it. A wooden post, weathered, crooked, nearly invisible. And tied to it is a strip of faded white cloth. Kincaid breathes in sharply. "That's not ours." Brooks shakes his head. "No, that's a German marker. Infantry used it to guide retreat or repositioning. Meaning the safe path is confirmed. Meaning the minefield is nearly mapped. Meaning they might survive this after all." But as Brooks crawls closer, dragging the bucket one final time to confirm no hidden surprises, he freezes. This time, there is no clink. There is no whisper of danger. Instead, sticking out from the base of the post, barely visible beneath the grass, is a short length of wire, thin, taut, leading into the hedgerow. A tripwire, connected to something in the brush. Brooks's eyes widen. "Sergeant, don't move." Kincaid stiffens instantly. Brooks leans in, brushing soil gently aside. His breath comes shallow now, his pulse a hammer in his skull. The wire leads into a concealed groove cut into the hedgerow roots, and inside that groove, Brooks spots the unmistakable curved metal body of an S-mine. But this one is rigged differently. Not pressure, not tension release. It's wired to trigger outward, into the path, the safe path. Brooks whispers, "They booby-trapped their own escape route." Kincaid's jaw clenches. Then they expected someone to find it. Brooks swallows. The Germans didn't just build a minefield, they built a puzzle. A trap designed to kill the smartest man in any platoon, the one who figured out the way through. And Brooks just found the trigger. He looks up at Kincaid, voice barely audible. "Sergeant, if I cut the wrong wire, this whole field goes up." Kincaid's eyes widen. "Then don't cut it." But there's no choice. They can't move forward without disabling it. They can't move backward without risking someone brushing the wire. They are stuck, and Brooks is the only man close enough and calm enough to attempt it. His hands tremble as he reaches for the wire. And then, a sound cracks through the fog behind them. A rifle shot. A German voice shouting from somewhere in the hedgerows. The enemy has spotted them. Brooks looks back at Kincaid. Kincaid looks at the mine. No time. No options. Just a decision that will define whether 50 men live or die.
Brooks shakes his head, voice barely a breath. "We can't go back, Sergeant. Someone'll brush it in the chaos." He's right. In the middle of a firefight, movement becomes frantic. Men stumble, crawl, flinch, drag their gear. Any one of them could snag the tripwire without knowing it. And that S-mine, rigged as it is, wouldn't just kill him, it would kill anyone near him. Kincaid looks toward the hedgerow, then back at Brooks. "You cut that wrong, this whole damn field lights up." Brooks swallows, tasting mud and adrenaline. "If I don't cut it, we're trapped here under fire." A German voice calls out in the distance, loud, taunting, confident. Another voice answers, closer. They're maneuvering, trying to flank, trying to pin the Americans against the minefield they haven't fully mapped. Kincaid brings his BAR around, sighting toward the sound. "I'll cover you. Just tell me what you need." Brooks runs a thumb along the wire, feeling for tension. Even the slightest vibration could set it off. Sweat beads at his forehead despite the cold air. He forces himself to breathe slowly. He studies the wire's entry point into the hedgerow. It's looped around a root, tied off, snaking toward a small pressure housing, an improvised release mechanism made from a scavenged fuse cup. German fieldcraft at its cruelest. Brooks examines the anchor point again, inch by inch. Sometimes mines talk to you, not with sound, but with shape. And Brooks finally sees it. 2 wires, not 1. The Germans doubled it. Redundancy, failsafe, a tripwire and a failsafe wire behind it. Cut the wrong one, boom. Cut both at once, boom. Cut the main wire without preventing tension on the secondary, boom. It's a puzzle built out of death. Kincaid glances over. "You make sense of it?" Brooks nods slowly. "Yeah. They rigged it 2-line system. One pulls the fuse, the other releases the safety on the bounding charge." Kincaid grunts. "Meaning?" Brooks looks straight at him. "Meaning, if I cut the primary wire while the secondary is still armed, the Betty jumps." Kincaid adjusts his grip on the BAR. "So what do you do?" Brooks closes his eyes for a heartbeat. Calm. Focus. Silence. Then softly, "I need a stick. Something rigid." Kincaid reaches into the dirt, breaks off a thick root, and hands it over. "This work?" Brooks nods. "Hold your fire unless you see them charging. Any vibration through the ground could be enough to—" Another rifle cracks from the fog. Dirt spits up inches from Brooks' hand. Kincaid fires 3 bursts into the hedgerow, controlled, deadly, forcing the Germans to duck. "Just do it, kid." Brooks inches closer to the mine, his face framed by the dark green roots. He holds the stick beneath the secondary wire, lifting it just enough to relieve tension. One mistake now, and he won't even feel the explosion. He reaches into his pocket. His hand trembles violently. He forces it steady. He pulls out his small folding knife. The blade clicks open. Time slows. He slides the knife under the primary wire. The Germans shout again, closer. Boots crash through leaves. Kincaid fires another burst, yelling back,
You want him? Come get him. Brooks inhales sharply. Then, a different sound. From the right. Not German. A shout. Contact! Multiple on the flank!
Company F opens fire, rifles blazing, M1 Garands cracking in rhythmic thunder. The minefield lights up with muzzle flashes reflecting off fog like distant lightning. Brooks forces out a whisper. Steady! Steady! He applies pressure to the secondary wire with the stick. The primary wire goes slack. He cuts. A soft ping as the severed wire flicks away harmlessly. But the tension on the secondary wire increases. Brooks tightens his jaw. Not yet! Not yet! He shifts the stick a millimeter, just enough to stabilize the second line. Then, with his other hand, he pinches the secondary wire between his fingers. His pulse climbs to a deafening roar in his ears. He cuts the secondary. Silence. Dead silence. Not even a breath. He waits. 1 second. 2. 5. Nothing. The S-mine is dead. Brooks nearly collapses with relief. He looks back at Kincaid. It's disarmed. We have a way through. But Kincaid isn't looking at the mine. He's staring past Brooks, into the thickening fog, where silhouettes are emerging from the hedgerows. German silhouettes, flanking, advancing, closing in on the Americans trapped at the edge of the minefield. Kincaid grits his teeth. Brooks, get back now! They're coming! But Brooks doesn't move. He sees something in the Germans' formation. Something strange. They're not rushing. They're not firing as they advance. They're spreading out? Brooks' stomach turns. He whispers, Sergeant? I don't think they're attacking us. Kincaid frowns. What? Brooks points at the Germans' slow, precise spacing. That's how they move when they're crossing one of their own minefields. The Germans aren't flanking. They're following their own safe path, the same path Brooks just uncovered. Meaning one thing, they're not here to attack. They're here to spring the trap. And Company F is standing exactly where the Germans want them. Kincaid's eyes widen. Everyone is about to be caught in a crossfire. Brooks whispers, No, Sergeant. Worse. He looks out at the fog, where the Germans are guiding their squad around something. Something hidden, something larger, something deadly. Brooks's voice trembles. They're leading us straight into a kill zone. The first metallic clink had been shocking. The second confirmed it wasn't luck. But by the time the bucket scraped out its 10th faint warning, the men of Able Company were no longer breathing like soldiers advancing through Normandy. They were breathing like men walking above their own graves. It was still the same morning, June 14, 1944, but the air felt thicker now. Damp heat clung to their uniforms, mixing with the earthy smell of churned soil and the faint metallic tang of disturbed steel. The hedgerows around them trembled under distant artillery thumps, sending tiny ripples through the grass. Every vibration made the bucket whisper against itself, a low grinding as the gravel inside shifted like nervous teeth. Private Collins knelt over another patch of earth, moving slowly, methodically. Shh. Scrape, scrape, then clink. There it was again, soft, almost apologetic, but unmistakable. Tellermine. Corporal Jensen felt his stomach twist as he crouched beside Collins. Jesus, that's 13, he whispered, voice tight enough to snap. 13 we would have walked right over. Collins didn't answer. He was in a focused trance now, face expressionless, sweat dripping from his brow into the dirt. His fingers, gloved but trembling, placed a tiny strip of white cloth above the buried disc. Another marker. Another life saved. Behind them, the platoon watched in a silent half-circle. No jokes now, no snide comments. All eyes on the private who, 2 hours earlier, had been the kid who thought too much. He moved forward another inch. Another scrape. Another metallic whisper. Another mine. You could almost feel the men's nerves fraying with each discovery. This was no ordinary field. This was a kill zone. The kind German pioneers designed to funnel Allied infantry into predictable, deadly lanes. And it had worked, until luck, fear, and one dented bucket collided in the hands of a private who refused to trust the dirt. By the time Collins uncovered the 20th mine, L.T. Harwood couldn't hold it in anymore. Collins, he hissed, pull back. Engineers will be here in 10. The private didn't stop. He didn't even look up. There's more, sir, he said quietly. I can hear them. Hear them. The words chilled everyone, but they all suddenly believed him, because the field was too perfect, too untouched. Not a single shell crater, not a single footprint, just a deceptively smooth carpet of soil, and the death waiting beneath it. Collins swept again. Scrape, clink. 21, then 22. Each one was like pulling a pin from a grenade someone had forgotten to throw. By 30, even the lieutenant refused to intervene. He simply watched, helpless, knowing full well that pulling Collins back meant risking every man who would eventually cross this ground. The sound of approaching engines, Shermans in the distance, vibrated through the hedgerows, rattling leaves and sending a shiver through the bucket's metal frame. The gravel trembled inside it like a living thing. Scrape. Clink. 31. More sweat. More trembling hands. More breathless silence. Somewhere behind them, Sergeant Hale murmured under his breath, "This field ain't mined. This field is infested." But the worst moment came when Collins slid the bucket forward, and it didn't scrape. It thunked. A dull, hollow thud. Every man froze. Collins swallowed hard. Jensen whispered, "What the hell was that?" Collins gently nudged the bucket sideways. A soft metal bump answered back. The men's faces drained pale. This one was different. A bounding S-mine. The notorious Bouncing Betty. If Collins put even a fraction too much weight, if the bucket pressed down an inch too far, the mine would vault 3 feet into the air before spraying ball bearings in every direction. Range? 360 degrees. Fatal radius? 20 meters. Outcome? Extinction. Collins didn't blink. He just whispered, "Marker." And Jensen dropped a red cloth. This one thicker, brighter, angrier than the rest. 33. Then 34. Then 35. By now, even the noises seemed hushed around them, as if the ward itself were watching. The men barely breathed. No one moved unless Collins told them to. A bucket, a handful of gravel, and a private with instincts no one understood were now the only things preventing mass death. At mine number 40, Collins finally paused. His hand shook. His breath came in short bursts. The gravel shifted inside the bucket like rain on a tin roof. You could see his exhaustion. Arms stiff, eyes red, knees sinking into Normandy mud. 40 mines uncovered, and still counting. But then something changed. Collins leaned in, his brow furrowed. Very softly, barely audible, the bucket whispered a new sound. Not a clink, not a bump. Something else. A sound that didn't belong. He lifted the bucket an inch. His eyes widened. And for the first time since the bucket touched dirt, Collins whispered a single shaken word. "Sir, you need to see this." The rumble of distant jeeps grew louder. Dust kicked up from the Normandy lanes, carrying with it the sharp smell of gasoline, gun oil, and something else. Adrenaline-soaked fear. When the Army engineers of the 20th Combat Engineer Battalion, led by First Lieutenant Howard McAllister, the scene was unlike anything they'd ever seen. 40 mines, meticulously marked with bits of cloth, twine, and stakes, laid out in a perfect, invisible pattern across nearly 50 yards of hedgerow and churned farmland. McAllister froze. His seasoned eyes scanned the field. Son of a... How did someone do all this? Kincaid stepped forward, mud dripping from his boots. Private Brooks did it all himself. The engineers laughed at first, incredulous, then quieted as they realized Brooks was serious. The dented bucket lay at his side, gravel still inside. The scratches on its rim told the story of hours of precise work, inches at a time, across a field that could have ended every life in the platoon. Brooks barely looked up. His arms ached, knees scraped raw, and sweat mixed with mud on his face. I just followed the sound. One engineer, Sergeant Malcolm O'Neill, knelt, brushing away dirt over a teller mine. Followed the sound? Kid, we've been clearing minefields for 2 years, and half the time we walk right into death. You heard steel under gravel and marked 40 of these? That's... His voice trailed off. McAllister shook his head. That's a miracle. But miracles in Normandy came with a price. The Germans were still out there. Somewhere in the fog, a patrol had noticed the column stalled at the edge of the field. They hadn't engaged yet, but the careful, lethal silence of a unit that knew it had the advantage was a warning that they could attack at any moment. The engineers wasted no time. They methodically traced Brooks's markers, carefully disarming every teller and S-mine. The process that would usually take an entire morning took only a fraction of that time because the path Brooks had uncovered was precise, methodical, and most importantly, safe to follow.
Kincaid watched his men begin moving along the newly mapped corridor. Every footstep was deliberate. Every glance toward the hedgerow was wary. But the danger had been neutralized. 40 potential deaths had been turned into 40 warnings, thanks to the instincts and patience of one private. The engineers shook their heads, whispering among themselves.
We've never seen a field like this mapped so quickly. He saved the whole company. Brooks finally slumped, leaning against Kincaid. Did we make it? The sergeant smiled grimly. Yeah, kid, and it's all thanks to your stupid bucket. The engineers documented every detail, sketching diagrams for reports back at battalion headquarters. Brooks's technique, the gravel, the bucket, the scraping method, was soon written into after-action reports. Military manuals later referenced similar methods for improvised mine detection, often citing Normandy as the field where it was first proven to work. Yet, even in the triumph, the weight of what could have happened hung over everyone. The men of Company F walked through the safe path, shoulders tense, eyes forward. They had crossed a battlefield designed to kill them, and lived. And as Brooks stepped at the very end of the mapped corridor, mud splattered, bucket empty now, he felt a strange mixture of pride and disbelief. He had been mocked, he had been dismissed, called cautious, called stupid. Yet here he was, the man who saved 40 lives in a single morning. The engineers, officers, and men all watched quietly as Brooks finally let himself relax. Even the sergeant, usually all bark and no pause, patted him on the shoulder. You did good, kid. You did real good. And somewhere in the distance, the fog began to lift over Normandy, revealing the hedgerows, churned earth, and the remnants of a field that could have been their tomb. A stupid bucket trick had turned into a miracle that would echo through the reports, diaries, and memories of soldiers for decades to come. But the story didn't end there, because for Brooks and Company F, the war would continue, and every step forward reminded them how close they had come to never stepping at all. The sun hung low in the sky over Normandy, casting long shadows across the churned fields and hedgerows that had just become a graveyard avoided by inches. Company F, exhausted and mud-streaked, gathered in a small clearing behind the safe corridor, the weight of the morning pressing on every soldier like a wet blanket. Lieutenant Kincaid finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. He watched Brooks slump against a tree, the dented bucket still at his feet. Around them, men whispered quietly among themselves, eyes darting back toward the minefield, almost unwilling to believe they had survived it intact. 40 mines, 40 lives saved, and they hadn't even been grazed. Private Brooks, Kincaid began, his voice low but carrying across the clearing. You might have just saved this whole company today. Brooks didn't respond immediately. He was still staring at the mud, hands caked with soil and gravel, his chest rising and falling rapidly. When he finally looked up, there was a faint, tired smile. Just did what made sense, sir. But the men weren't so polite. They crowded around him, slapping shoulders, shaking hands, murmuring in disbelief. Even the toughest sergeants, those who had rolled their eyes at him hours before, looked stunned. One muttered, almost reverently, "That kid, he's a miracle." Word of Brooks's ingenuity spread quickly. By midday, engineers, officers, and fellow soldiers were retelling the story. The dented bucket, once an object of ridicule, had become a symbol of survival. Lieutenant McAllister insisted on documenting every detail in the after-action reports. The scraping of gravel, the metallic clinks, the pattern of mines uncovered, the tense moment with the S-mine tripwire. Never seen a field cleared like that without a single casualty, one engineer noted, shaking his head. And a private did it? A private? Brooks, however, remained humble. Even as reporters and photographers from the division snapped pictures, the private insisted, "I just listened." His keen observation, calm under pressure, and willingness to act when no one else would, had made the impossible achievable. Back at battalion headquarters that evening, officers pored over the engineer's sketches, comparing Brooks's path with satellite photos and intelligence maps. What had taken seasoned soldiers hours to map, often with casualties, had been completed by one young soldier with a bucket and gravel in less than 2 hours. And the wider implications were clear. The method was adapted in other operations. Improvised mine detection became a valuable skill taught to soldiers in training, refined for future operations in Europe and beyond. Brooks's stupid trick would eventually be cited in manuals as an example of ingenuity saving lives in combat. But even with the accolades, the emotional weight of the day lingered. The men of Company F knew how close they had come to disaster. They had survived because of one person's patience and courage, but in war, survival is always temporary. The fog of Normandy was not done with them, and every step forward was measured against the knowledge that death had almost been unavoidable. As dusk fell and the men huddled for a brief meal, the dented bucket sat in the center of the clearing, empty but proud. It had been a simple tool, almost laughable at first, Yet in the hands of someone willing to see patterns where others saw chaos, it became the difference between life and death. Private Brooks cleaned his hands, wiped the sweat and mud from his brow, and for the first time allowed himself a deep breath of relief. Around him, his comrades murmured stories of the day's events, each retelling adding weight to the legend forming around him. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, a rare sound in the battered fields of Normandy. For a moment, there was quiet. The war raged on, but for one day, one company, one private, had turned the tide, had taken the impossible, and made it real. And as Brooks looked across the horizon, he realized something profound. Survival wasn't always about firepower or strategy. Sometimes it was about observation, courage, and the courage to act when no one else dared. Years later, in a quiet military archive tucked away in Washington, D.C., a faded photograph rests on a shelf. It shows a young private kneeling in a muddy Normandy field, a dented metal bucket at his side, gravel spilling across the churned earth. 40 small cloth markers dot the field behind him, each one a testament to a life saved. On the back, someone wrote in neat cursive, "Private Jimmy Brooks, the miracle of Normandy." Brooks's story traveled slowly at first. Within Company F, he was known as the Bucket Kid, the one who quietly outsmarted death. Letters home carried the tale, but in the fog of war, few believed it could be true. It wasn't until the official after-action reports arrived, detailing the 40 mines he had detected, the S-mine rigging he had disarmed, and the lives spared, that historians and military tacticians began to recognize the full scope of what had happened. By the 1950s, Brooks's improvised technique was being taught in classrooms for combat engineers. Manuals described the gravel drag method as an example of ingenuity under pressure. It was a simple idea, almost laughable at first, but it saved an entire company of soldiers, an achievement that textbooks, lectures, and later documentaries would revisit again and again. Brooks himself rarely spoke of it. In interviews, he would shrug, a faint smile on his weathered face, and say, "I just tried not to die." He never liked the spotlight, never wanted medals for what he saw as instinct and practicality. But the Army, historians, and the men of Company F remembered. They remembered that a dented metal bucket, loose gravel, and a private willing to trust his senses had made the difference between life and death on a foggy morning in Normandy. The story of the stupid bucket trick endures not because of its novelty, but because it embodies the human spirit in war. Creativity under pressure, courage when fear is overwhelming, and the knowledge that one person's careful thinking can ripple outward to save dozens of lives. And as for the bucket, it sits in a glass case at the National World War II Museum, dented and worn. Gravel long gone. Visitors often ask curators why such a simple, unimpressive object is on display. The answer is simple, because in the hands of Private Jimmy Brooks, it became a life-saving instrument, a symbol of ingenuity, and a reminder that sometimes the stupid ideas are the smartest ones of all. Brooks passed away quietly decades later, unheralded by the world, but immortalized in the lives he saved. His story is told in whispered awe among soldiers, in textbooks, and in the memories of those who survived that deadly field. One dented bucket, one private, 40 mines avoided, an improbable hero in the chaos of war. And the lesson endures. Courage and cleverness, even in the smallest forms, can change history.